Chapter 1. The Disease of Modern Weakness. You wake up tired, even after sleeping. The first thing your hand reaches for isn't a sword, a tool, or purpose. It's your phone. The screen lights up, and instantly, your spirit is consumed by noise, news, notifications, drama, distraction. You scroll for a moment, maybe two, but already something inside you has weakened. You've started your day as a slave to impulse. You've lost the first battle before you've even opened your eyes. Most men today do not live, they drift. They confuse activity with purpose, attention with discipline, noise with progress. Their minds are crowded, their focus scattered. They chase comfort, but find only emptiness. They have forgotten how to be still, how to work in silence, how to stand alone without collapsing into distraction. Weakness has disguised itself as convenience. Comfort has turned into a slow poison that kills ambition one pleasure at a time. This is the truth that most refuse to face. Your enemies are not outside you. They live in your habits, your distractions, your inability to sit with your own thoughts. You fear stillness because it exposes the truth of who you are. You drown in entertainment because it numbs the ache of what you could become, but deep down, you know something is wrong. You can feel it, the restlessness, the anxiety, the unspoken guilt of wasted potential. Musashi called it the sickness of the spirit. Centuries ago, he saw this disease long before smartphones, long before social media, long before men lost themselves in endless distraction. He understood that the greatest danger to a warrior is not the sword of his enemy, it is the weakness of his own mind. The one who cannot control himself will always be controlled by something else. And yet, buried beneath that weakness is something sacred, a memory of what men once were, focused, strong, unshaken. There is an ancient strength within you, waiting to be reawakened. But it will not come from comfort. It will not come from affirmation or empty words. It comes only through the brutal process of discipline and truth. What if I told you that there is a single, brutal insight that could reshape your mind? An ancient truth from Musashi's life that most people today are too soft to live by, but if you understand it, truly understand it, it can free you from distraction and rebuild your spirit. That truth is this: a man must walk alone if he wishes to master himself. This was Musashi's ultimate lesson, the way of aloneness. He was undefeated in over 60 duels, but his greatest victories were not against other warriors, they were against his own ego. Fear and desire for comfort in solitude, he learned the nature of strength. In silence, he forged the unbreakable mind. You might think solitude means isolation or loneliness. It doesn't. It means walking your own path, even when no one believes in you. It means becoming so disciplined that the world no longer controls you. It means learning to hear your own inner voice above the chaos of the crowd. Most people will never experience this. They are too addicted to noise, too fragile to face themselves, too desperate to belong. But if you learn this, if you truly listen to what Musashi's life reveals, it can transform you. Stay until the end of this lesson. Not because it's entertaining, but because if you apply what you hear today, it will change how you live, how you train, how you work, how you think. Subscribe to this dojo of the mind, this place where ancient discipline meets the modern world. Here, every story is a form of training. Every word is meant to sharpen you. This is not about motivation, it's about mastery. If you stay until the end, you'll understand how Musashi's brutal insight can be lived right now, in your world, your habits, your thoughts, because strength is not something you find. It's something you forge, and the forging begins in solitude. Chapter 2. The Hermit of the Mountain. It was the time of late autumn in the mountains of Kyushu. The trees were shedding their last red leaves, and mist hung heavy between the ridges. In a small hut carved from rock and cedar, an old man sat cross-legged before a dying fire. His robe was simple, his hair tied loosely behind his head. His sword lay across his lap, untouched, its blade clean but weathered. This was Miyamoto Musashi, once a warrior feared across Japan. Now, a hermit seeking peace through simplicity, he no longer dueled, he no longer sought glory. His only battle now was the one within the endless refinement of his spirit. Each morning, he rose before dawn, practiced his sword until the mist lifted, then spent hours painting, meditating, and writing reflections on what it meant to live without being ruled by fear or vanity. He lived alone, yet his solitude was not emptiness, it was freedom. One morning, as the sun began to pierce through the fog, a young man appeared at the edge of the clearing. His name was Ryo. He was in his 20s, tall, strong, and dressed in the armor of a warrior. He had heard stories of Musashi, the undefeated swordsman who defeated 60 men and vanished into the mountains. Ryo had come seeking power. He wanted to learn the secret to victory. He bowed deeply, his voice trembling with pride and excitement. "Master Musashi," he said, "teach me how to win as you have. Teach me the way to become invincible." Musashi looked up slowly, his expression unreadable. His eyes were still, ancient, piercing through Ryo's pride. "You wish to become invincible?" he asked quietly. "Yes," Ryo said. "I've trained for years. I know the forms, the techniques. But I feel something missing. I want to be unstoppable." Musashi turned back toward the fire, stirring it gently with a stick. "If you wish to be unstoppable, you must first stop yourself," Ryo frowned. "Stop myself? I don't understand." "You will," Musashi replied. "If you have the patience to stay," he handed the young man a small bucket. "Fetch water from the stream," Ryo hesitated. "But master, I came to learn the sword." "Then begin by learning stillness," Musashi said, "and bring the water." Ryo obeyed, though confusion burned inside him. He had imagined lessons in swordsmanship, battles of precision and strength. Instead, he found himself performing chores, gathering firewood, fetching water, cleaning the small hut. Each day Musashi trained in silence, and Ryo watched. Days turned into weeks. Not once did the old master teach him a technique. At first, Ryo burned with frustration. Why does he waste my time? He thought, I came to learn combat, not to be his servant. Yet each time he tried to question Musashi, the master only replied, "Be patient. The sword you wish to wield is not forged from steel." The mountain was cold, the silence heavy. Ryo began to feel his own mind turning against him. Without distraction, his thoughts grew loud: regret, pride, fear, doubt. He realized that even in stillness he could not rest. He was always running from something inside himself. Chapter 3. The Proud Young Warrior. Ryo was not a coward, but he was restless. Like many young men, he confused movement with progress in his village. He had been praised for his speed, his aggression, his passion. People told him he was born for greatness, and he believed them. But now, under Musashi's silent gaze, he felt exposed. His confidence began to crumble. One night, as they sat by the fire, Ryo finally broke. "Master," he said bitterly, "you sit in silence, you paint, you stare at water, you speak in riddles. When will you teach me to fight?" Musashi looked at him for a long moment, his face calm as the night air. "Fight?" he said quietly. "You cannot even stand still." "I can fight," Ryo shouted. "I've trained for years. I've defeated many opponents. Then why are you here?" Musashi asked. Ryo froze. He wanted to say something, but his throat tightened. The truth was sharp and simple. He was here because, despite all his victories, he still felt weak. He had skill, but no peace. He had success, but no mastery. Musashi saw the conflict in his eyes and said softly, "You are proud because the world has praised you for small victories. You believe skill alone makes you strong, but you are wrong. Skill is nothing without clarity. Movement is nothing without direction until you master your own mind. Every victory will feel hollow." The words cut deep. Ryo looked down at his hands, trembling. For the first time, he realized that Musashi's silence was not indifference. It was reflection. The master wasn't ignoring him. He was testing him, testing his patience, his ego, his endurance. But Ryo was not ready to understand. The next morning, he would reach his breaking point. Chapter 4, The Breaking Point. It was dawn when Ryo finally snapped. For days, Musashi had ordered him to repeat the same motion: draw the sword, sheath it, draw again, hundreds of times. In silence, his arms ached, his mind screamed with boredom. "This is meaningless," Ryo shouted. "You're wasting my time. You promised to teach me how to win." Musashi stood up slowly, his face still calm. "You are not ready to win." Ryo's anger burned hotter. "Then test me," he said, drawing his sword. "If you think I am unworthy, prove it." Musashi sighed. "Very well." They faced each other in the clearing. The mist hung low, the world utterly silent. Ryo's heart pounded. He lunged forward with all his speed, his blade flashing, but Musashi did not move. He simply stepped aside each time, dodging effortlessly. Ryo attacked again and again, his strikes fueled by pride and rage. After minutes of furious movement, he collapsed, panting, his sword heavy in his hands. Musashi walked toward him slowly. "Do you see?" he said softly. "You fought with anger, with ego, with desperation. You were not fighting me. You were fighting your own thoughts." He leaned close, his voice cold but clear. "You are loud because you are afraid of silence. You fight others because you fear to face yourself. Until that fear dies, you will lose every battle that matters." Ryo dropped his sword. For the first time in his life, he could not speak. Musashi turned away and said, "Now, perhaps you are ready to learn." Chapter 5. The brutal insight. The next morning, the mountain was silent. Mist rose from the valley, curling around the trees like breath. Ryo sat in the dirt where he had fallen the day before, his sword beside him. His body was sore, but it was not the pain of defeat that troubled him. It was the realization that his enemy had never been Musashi. It was his own mind. Musashi approached slowly, a bowl of water in his hand. He placed it before Ryo and sat across from him. For a while, neither spoke. The sound of dripping dew filled the air. Finally, the master said, "You are ready to hear the truth. But understand, what I will tell you is not gentle. The truth never is." Ryo nodded. "The first thing you must know," Musashi began, "is that most men are prisoners. They live surrounded by noise, by comfort, by other people's opinions. They think they are free, but their minds are caged by fear and distraction. They cannot sit in silence. They cannot work without reward. They cannot endure solitude. And because of this, they are weak." He looked directly at Ryo. "If you wish to be strong, you must become free, and freedom begins with solitude." The first insight, the way of aloneness. "Aloneness," Musashi said, "is not loneliness, it is clarity when you walk alone. You see who you truly are without the mirrors of others. You begin to hear your own thoughts without interruption. You begin to notice your weaknesses, your fears, your habits, and that knowledge is the foundation of mastery." Ryo frowned. "But master, men are social. How can a warrior live without others?" Musashi smiled faintly. "A warrior lives with others, but he depends on none. He learns to stand alone so he can walk among men without bending to them. When you need approval, you lose power. When you crave company, you lose strength. Solitude is the forge that tempers the spirit." He stood and pointed to the horizon where the sun broke through the mist. "When I was young, I lived among warriors. I saw their bravado, their noise, their pride. But when I walked alone, I met my fear, I met my weakness, and I killed them. That is how I became undefeated, not through technique, but through solitude." Modern science now echoes what Musashi discovered centuries ago. A study at Harvard found that periods of solitude increase mental resilience and creativity, strengthening the part of the brain that controls decision-making. Solitude sharpens focus and quiets emotional chaos. Musashi's mountains were not an escape from the world, they were his laboratory of self-mastery. Ryo listened silently, his pride softening for the first time. He understood that solitude was not punishment, it was purification. The second insight, the discipline of repetition. Musashi walked to the center of the clearing and drew a line in the dirt with his sword. "The next lesson," he said, "is repetition. Greatness is built in boredom. You wish for mastery, but you cannot repeat the same motion without restlessness. That is why you fail." Ryo bowed his head. "But master, isn't repetition dull? Doesn't it make a man mechanical?" Musashi shook his head. "Only to those who have no depth. A shallow man repeats with his hands, a master repeats with his soul, every stroke, every breath. Every action becomes meditation. Repetition is not dullness, it is devotion." He raised his sword and performed the same cut 3 times. Each movement was identical, yet alive, deliberate, and powerful. "To the untrained eye, this is the same stroke," he said. "But to me, each is new, because I am new in every moment. This is what your generation does not understand. You crave novelty because you cannot bear depth." A neuroscientist at Stanford discovered that repetition builds mastery by strengthening neural pathways. Each cycle of deliberate practice forges new connections in the brain. Musashi understood this intuitively. "Repetition is the chisel," he said. "It shapes the mind as surely as it shapes the body. You cannot build strength without enduring monotony. You cannot master anything until you learn to love the act of training itself." Ryo remembered the endless days of drawing his sword under Musashi's orders. What he had once thought meaningless now felt sacred. Every repetition had been carving away his impatience. Musashi smiled. When a man learns to love repetition, he becomes unstoppable because the world cannot bore him. And the one who cannot be bored cannot be broken. The third insight. The death of emotion. As the day grew warmer, Musashi motioned for Ryo to follow him into the forest. They walked until they came to a clearing where a stream flowed quietly over stones. Musashi knelt by the water and said, "This is your next lesson, the death of emotion." Ryo looked uneasy. To be without emotion, isn't that inhuman? No, Musashi said. To be ruled by emotion is inhuman. Emotion is the wind. You are the mountain. The wind can pass through you, but it cannot move you. He picked up a pebble and tossed it into the water. Ripples spread outward, then faded into stillness. The mind of the warrior must be like this water. When struck, it ripples, but always returns to calm when you are angry. You lose clarity. When you are sad, you lose strength. A man who obeys emotion becomes a slave to it. Ryo thought of his duel with Musashi, of how rage had blinded him. He lowered his head in shame. "How do I kill emotion, master?" Musashi shook his head. "You do not kill it, you observe it. You let it burn and fade without acting on it. When you can watch emotion without reacting, you become free." Modern psychology agrees. Mindfulness training reduces impulsive behavior by strengthening the brain's frontal cortex. The warrior's calm, science now knows, is a form of neurological control. Musashi called it the still heart, a heart that feels everything but is ruled by nothing. "Remember this," Musashi said quietly. "Emotion is fire. It can cook your food or burn your house. The difference lies in control." The fourth insight, the simplicity of focus. They returned to the hut as the sun dipped low. Musashi sat by the fire and began to carve a small wooden statue with a knife. Each motion was slow, deliberate, clean. Ryo watched in silence until the old master finally spoke. "The fourth insight," Musashi said, "is simplicity. Do nothing that is of no use." Ryo frowned. "But life is full of things, master. How can we know what is useful?" Musashi pointed to the fire. "When I was young, I carried many swords. Many plans, many desires, each one weighed me down. One day I realized that half of what I did was useless. I began cutting away the unnecessary possessions, distractions, even friendships that made my spirit heavy. When you remove what is useless, what remains becomes powerful." He set down the carving, a perfect, balanced figure of a bird. Simplicity is clarity. You cannot hit the target if you aim at 10 things. You must learn to do less with greater attention. Ryo thought of his own life, his endless ambitions, his need for recognition, his constant search for the next victory. He realized how much energy he had wasted chasing everything except peace. "In war," Musashi said, "the man who moves least often wins most. In life, the same is true. Do not scatter your mind. Every time you chase a new desire, you dull your blade." A researcher at MIT found that multitasking lowers performance by 40%. The modern man, Musashi would say, is not overwhelmed because life is hard, but because he refuses to simplify. "Simplicity," Musashi continued, "is not poverty, it is precision. The man who lives simply is not poor. He is focused, and focus is wealth." The fifth insight. The courage to die daily. Night fell over the mountain. The stars glimmered through the mist. Musashi sat in meditation as Ryo tended the fire. After a long silence, the master opened his eyes. "There is one final lesson," he said softly. "The courage to die daily." Ryo looked up, startled. "To die daily?" "Yes," Musashi said. "Every morning I imagine myself dead, not to mourn, but to live without fear. When you accept death, you stop hesitating, you stop clinging to comfort, reputation, or security. A man who dies daily is free, because nothing can be taken from him." He leaned forward, his voice sharp but calm. "You, Ryo, are afraid. You fear failure. Embarrassment, loss, these are small deaths you refuse to face until you accept them. You will live as a prisoner." Ryo stared into the fire. "But how can I stop fearing death?" Musashi smiled faintly. "By meeting it every day. Let something inside you die, your laziness, your excuses, your attachment to comfort. When you kill these things, you will feel more alive than ever." Modern psychology now supports this ancient truth. Researchers at Harvard found that people who contemplate mortality regularly experience greater focus and gratitude. When you remember that time is short, you stop wasting it. Musashi rose, his shadow long against the firelight. This is the brutal insight. Ryo, to live freely, you must die to weakness every day. You must kill the part of yourself that seeks ease. You must let go of the world before it takes you. Only then will you walk unshaken through it. Ryo felt something shift inside him, a stillness he had never known. For the first time, he did not feel afraid. He understood to be strong was not to fight harder, it was to let go completely. The next morning, Musashi found Ryo already training before sunrise. His movements were slow, deliberate, alive. There was no aggression, no noise, only rhythm and calm. The boy who had once fought out of pride now moved from peace. Musashi watched in silence. His eyes filled with quiet satisfaction. After a while, he said, "Now you are beginning to see. The enemy was never outside you." Ryo bowed deeply. "Then what is my next lesson, master?" Musashi smiled. "To practice what you already know, that is the only lesson there ever was." Chapter 6. The Silence of Strength. For the next several weeks, the mountain lived in rhythm. Each day began before dawn training, meditation, silence. Ryo no longer asked questions. His movements spoke for him. His sword no longer flashed with fury, but flowed like the river beside the hut controlled. Smooth, effortless, the pride in his chest had burned away, replaced by something quieter, steadier. One evening, as the light faded into gold, Musashi stood beside him, watching his practice. "You no longer seek victory," the old master said. "You seek understanding. That is the beginning of strength." Ryo nodded. "I thought mastery was about power. Now I see it is about peace." Musashi looked at the horizon. Peace is not the absence of struggle, it is the ability to stand unmoved within it. The true warrior does not chase calm, he carries it. When they finished training, Musashi said nothing more. He turned toward the forest and disappeared into the mist. Leaving Ryo alone in the clearing, the young warrior watched him go. But he did not feel abandoned. For the first time, he understood the meaning of solitude, not emptiness, but completeness. Chapter 7. The Modern Warrior. Centuries have passed since that night on the mountain. But the war Musashi spoke of still rages, only the weapons have changed. The blades are now made of distraction, noise, and temptation. The duels are fought in the mind. Every time you reach for your phone instead of your purpose, every time you silence your goals to please the crowd, every time you escape into comfort instead of facing your fears, Musashi's insights are not relics. They are mirrors, reflections of the same human struggle that has never changed. The way of aloneness is not about living as a hermit. It is about learning to stand alone in a world that demands conformity. It means building a spine of discipline so strong that trends and opinions cannot bend it. When you walk alone, you stop begging for approval. You stop hiding behind validation. You begin to act because you have chosen the path, not because someone told you to. The modern world calls solitude isolation, but Musashi knew better. It is independence of thought. The ability to trust your judgment when the world is screaming otherwise. Repetition, too, remains the path to mastery. The problem today is not that people lack potential, it's that they lack patience. You want success after a week, strength after a few workouts, wisdom after reading a few quotes? But Musashi understood that mastery is the art of doing one thing with complete presence, again and again, until it becomes your nature. Boredom is not your enemy, it is your teacher. Those who can work through boredom discover the kind of focus others will never know. The death of emotion applies even more now. We live in an age where every emotion is broadcasted, amplified, and celebrated. But constant expression is not freedom, it's chaos. The one who learns to feel deeply, but remains steady, becomes unshakable. When the world is driven by outrage, calm becomes your greatest weapon. Simplicity may be the rarest virtue today. We drown in abundance, multitasking ourselves into madness. Musashi would tell you this. Do nothing that is of no use. Every unnecessary task, every distraction, every meaningless argument drains your energy. True power lies in reduction, in cutting away what doesn't serve your purpose until only clarity remains. And finally, the courage to die daily. You will not become strong by avoiding fear. You become strong by walking toward it every day. You must let a part of you do the lazy part, the distracted part, the one that seeks comfort. Let them die so that something sharper, quieter, and truer can live in their place. When you live as if every day could be your last, the petty worries of the world vanish. You speak honestly, you act decisively, You stop wasting time on things that do not matter. You stop existing and begin living. Chapter 8. The Warrior's Science. Modern research only proves what Musashi lived. Neuroscientists at Kyoto University found that meditation and solitude increase neural density in the areas of the brain responsible for self-control. In other words, silence literally strengthens willpower. At Stanford, repetition and deep practice were shown to carve myelin around neural pathways, making actions smoother and more precise. Every hour of consistent, deliberate practice creates the biological foundation of mastery. And psychologists from Harvard discovered that those who regularly contemplate mortality report higher focus, resilience, and gratitude. The simple act of facing death transforms fear into action. Musashi had no science, no laboratories, no data. He learned through living, but the wisdom remains. Solitude clears the mind. Repetition builds precision. Calm controls emotion. Simplicity directs energy. And death gives life meaning. These are not poetic ideals. They are psychological weapons for those who dare to use them. Chapter 9. The 5 Steps to Inner Mastery. If you wish to live Musashi's way in this modern world, begin here 5 disciplines for 5 insights. Each one is a blade. Together, they will forge your mind. Step 1. Practice solitude. Each day, spend at least 1 hour without noise, no phone, no music, no screens. Sit, walk, breathe, and listen. At first, you'll feel restless. That's the sound of your addiction to distraction dying. In silence, your clarity will sharpen. Step 2. Embrace repetition. Choose one skill, one practice, and repeat it daily. Write, train, study, whatever it is, give it full attention. Don't measure progress in days, measure it in depth. Every repetition is a strike against weakness. Step 3. Master emotion. When anger rises, don't speak. When fear grips you, don't run. When sadness comes, don't drown. Observe each emotion like clouds passing through the sky. You are not the weather, you are the mountain beneath it. Step 4. Simplify relentlessly. Once a week. Remove one thing that drains your focus, a useless habit, an item you don't need, a distraction you keep feeding. Each cut makes you stronger, as Musashi said. Do nothing that is of no use. Step 5. Die daily. Before sleep, reflect. If I died tonight, did I live with courage today? Let this question cut through your excuses. Live tomorrow as if time were slipping through your hands, because it is. Follow these steps not as rituals, but as warfare against your own weakness. This is not motivation, it's discipline, and discipline, lived daily, becomes peace. Chapter 10. The False Warrior. You say you want mastery, but you refuse solitude. You say you want greatness, but you fear boredom. You want peace, but you feed on noise. You want confidence, but you beg for validation. You want wisdom, but you consume without applying. This is the disease of modern weakness, the belief that thinking is doing. You've confused learning with transformation. You hoard advice, watch endless videos, and call it growth, yet your habits remain unchanged. Musashi would call this what it is: delusion. Most men today are addicted to potential. They live in constant preparation, but never in practice. They dream of the summit, but never start the climb. They want the respect of discipline without the sacrifice of solitude. They say they want strength, but their lives are built around comfort. The truth is brutal but freeing. You will never rise above the level of your habits, not your talent, not your intentions, not your dreams. Only your daily discipline defines you. You cannot wish your way to mastery. You must train your way there. Musashi's way has no shortcuts. There is no hack for patience, no app for consistency, no substitute for silence. Every man must face the mountain alone. Every man must confront himself. Every man must die to weakness and be reborn in effort. The modern world will mock this. It will tell you to rest, to find balance, to take it easy, but balance without intensity is mediocrity. Comfort without purpose is decay. If you want to live like no one else, you must train like no one else. Chapter 11. The Final Lesson. As dawn broke on Ryo's final morning in the mountains, he stood before Musashi one last time. The old master's eyes were calm, his posture still. You came seeking power, Musashi said. You found discipline, you came to learn victory, you learned silence. Now tell me, what is strength? Ryo bowed deeply. Strength, he said, is control over oneself. It is peace in struggle and purpose in solitude. Musashi smiled. Then you understand. Remember, the man who conquers himself leaves nothing unconquered. He turned and began walking toward the forest. Ryo watched him go, the figure fading into mist. He did not chase after him, for he knew the path no longer required a master. The lessons were already carved into his spirit. He understood now that the training never ends, it only deepens. Remember Musashi's final truth. The way is in training. So train every day until the noise fades, the fear dissolves, and your mind becomes a blade sharp enough to cut through anything. Walk the path, warrior. The world is chaos, but you can be calm.